Another day of training camp, and really I guess you could say it's the week of training camp has concluded, although I'm sure there will be more practices and conditioning going on over the weekend leading up to the Bulls' first preseason game, which will be on Tuesday. I'm sure that will likely be the most watched preseason game ever for Bulls fans in a long time, as I don't know about you guys, but I cannot wait to see this new team in action in a game setting, even if it is just the preseason. But anyway, in today's video, I'll be recapping today's updates from training camp. So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Before I get into the video, just wanted to give a huge shout out and thank you to all of my subscribers. We've had a ton of new subscribers recently. We passed 14,000 subs. And I know I've said this before, but I truly mean it. I am always humbled by the level of support that you guys have shown on the channel. I would have never thought that the channel would have grown in the way that it has since starting it last season. So really, guys, thank you so much, and I'm really looking forward to following along with you guys and the Bulls throughout this season. And if you're new and coming up on the channel for the very first time, be sure to subscribe, as I'll be covering the Bulls all season long with live game chats, post-game videos, and other Bulls content, so you don't want to miss out. Anyway, let's talk about training camp as we continue on into day 4 of camp. You know, it's funny because we keep talking about how this has kind of been an uneventful training camp thus far, even compared to last year where there were so many COVID restrictions in place. But when I listened to the Bulls Talk podcast that was released this morning, you had Casey Johnson directly say, hey, this has kind of been a boring training camp. But he mentioned how, in a way, this is a good thing, that it's almost painfully normal because you know what to expect of these guys. There aren't any storylines of certain players of who they're going to be going into the season, which players are going to be battling for certain positions. You know, he mentioned how really this training camp, for the most part, is just seeing guys work out and monitoring the injury progress of guys like Coby White and Patrick Williams, and that's really about it. One thing I did think that was interesting that was mentioned previously, and more so in today's practice as well, was that Billy Donovan has been speaking very highly of Stanley Johnson and how hard he's been working and fitting in nicely with this team, particularly in his effort on the defensive end, which we all knew Stanley Johnson is better known for his defense and not so much his offense, really not his offense at all. Now keep in mind, Stanley Johnson, although he did sign with the Bulls, it is a non-guaranteed contract, so it's possible the Bulls end up not keeping him beyond the preseason, but I personally think he'll be one of the guys that will ultimately make this roster for one of the 2 remaining roster spots, and really to give the Bulls some added wing depth. I've said that before, you know, I think both Stanley Johnson as well as Alice Johnson, those will be the 2 guys that will actually make the team and survive beyond training camp. The rest of the training camp invites, I have a hard time seeing them actually making this roster. Now, the other thing to know as it relates to camp, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday, is that it's becoming more and more of a common trend that Alex Caruso is going to have a big role on this team, and not just on defense because we know he's a great defender, but also on the offensive end. And I talked about this yesterday, that especially with Coby being out to start the season, the Bulls are really going to rely on him for some scoring off the bench, and we know he can do that. The guy averaged over 40% from 3 last year, so the dude can shoot. He just wasn't really relied upon at all in that capacity last season with the Lakers. The other thing that was interesting to note as it relates to Caruso was the fact that he mentioned that there was one guy who has been asking him the most questions in regards to his championship experience, and that is Ayo Dosunmu, which is great to hear from a young rookie who is going to be making his NBA debut later this month, soaking up as much information and experience as possible from one of the more seasoned players who has a title under his belt. The other thing that I thought was worth mentioning, and this was actually from yesterday at camp, but the media interviewed Derrick Jones Jr., and Derrick admitted that he grew up as a big Bulls fan and how the Bulls were always his favorite team because of Derrick Rose. And it's funny because I don't know about you guys, but growing up as a die-hard Bulls fan, as a kid, you know, of course, like all kids, I thought in those days that I was going to be going to the NBA one day and that I would be playing for my favorite team, the Chicago Bulls. Well, of course, again, like most kids, that dream never comes true because we don't have the talent to get there. But for the very select few of players, and I'm talking about players who are superstars, who have the luxury of going to whatever team they want, you never hear about them wanting to go play for their favorite team growing up as a kid. You know, I'm talking about guys like Kevin Durant as an example, who I don't know if he was a Wizards fan growing up, but I knew he grew up in the DC area. You would think that if he was a hardcore Wizards fan as a kid, wouldn't you eventually want to find your way to playing in DC? And like, regardless of how bad your team was, because you would want to play for them, given the fact that you were a diehard fan. I don't know, maybe that's just me. Maybe by the time these guys get to the pros, their fandom changes, their allegiances change, and it's just doesn't really matter to them anymore, but I always just found that concept interesting. And for the record, I'm not saying Derrick Jones Jr. is a superstar that has the luxury to go wherever he wants. No, not at all. He doesn't really. That's why he got traded to the Bulls. But he ended up playing for the team that he was a huge fan of as a kid. Who knows? Maybe that will actually motivate him even more playing for his childhood team that he grew up watching. Now, the media did also get a chance to interview Lavine and also Billy Donovan as well, and really some of this we already knew, and I've talked about last season, but Lavine reiterated the fact that what he's really appreciated most about Billy Donovan is his transparency and honesty, and even Donovan added saying the same thing about Zach as well. I mean, say what you will about Donovan and maybe not being the best coach out there that the Bulls could have chosen from last year, but if there is one thing he is really good at as a coach, is building that bond and relationship with his players. His players respect him and they buy into what he's saying. Zach even said it, over the course of his career, he's obviously had a lot of different coaches. This is actually his third coach on the Bulls alone, and he said today that he's had a way of feeling out coaches in his career, and he can tell when somebody isn't being real with you. Boylan. He then went on to say that Billy is a great guy, doesn't talk down to his players, and comes about it the right way when he's being critical of people. And when the media talked to Billy Donovan a little further, he mentioned his approach with the relationship that he's been able to build with Zach, and it will be the exact same way that he'll do it with Vooch, DeMar, and Lonzo. I mean, his emphasis is really on this being a relationship-based game when it comes to the player-coach dynamic. And he's dead right on that, because even some coaches who might not be the best when it comes to pure X's and O's, but they know how to develop their players, how to create bonds, and to get the most out of their abilities, and ultimately end up getting their guys to buy into their system, respect them as a coach, and see success as a team because of it. Whereas you might have some coaches who are incredibly gifted at running systems and understanding the game of basketball, yet they are terrible when it comes to the people side of coaching and gaining respect from their players. So it's one thing I do really like about Billy Donovan, that he has the respect of the guys and they value his mentorship as a coach, which is not something we really could have said about guys like Jim Boylan, Fred Hoiberg, and even Tibbs to an extent towards his final years. Now, because there weren't too many updates today, and if you saw my community post that I put out yesterday, then you know I am bringing the mailbags back. This was requested by some of you on my last video when I asked what are some of the things you guys would like to see on the channel going into the season. And this was one of them, as I have done a few in the past. Also, you guys wanted a live stream Q&A session, so I'll likely have that before the season starts as well. Just need to figure out a date on that. But anyway, I'll do a couple of your mailbag questions here and then have a full video dedicated to your mailbag questions at a later time, likely sometime this weekend. Now, the first one that I wanted to do, which isn't really a question, more of a statement, probably more of a hot take than anything, but this is from John Ticobo. It would be better for the Bulls if Patrick Williams turns into prime Draymond instead of Kawhi. Well, the short answer is no, not at all. It would always be better for a player to turn into prime Kawhi than Draymond Green. Now, I think I know where you're going with this. You're saying that in the sense that because of what the Bulls have on their roster, it would actually be preferable from a fit standpoint to have Patrick be more like Draymond Green, a great hustle player, hustle defender, an energizer, great playmaker, really all around a great glue guy that Draymond Green is, which, okay, I get, but listen, the Bulls roster that we have right now, mainly looking at the older guys in Vucevic and DeMar, this isn't going to be the roster for the long term. Talking 3 to 5 years from now. And even if a prime Kawhi didn't necessarily fit at this time, which I disagree that he wouldn't, but even if he didn't fit, you would 10 times out of 10 always prefer a prime Kawhi Leonard over Draymond, because even if the fit isn't there right now, a superstar like prime Kawhi Leonard you can build around and make adjustments to. So no, a prime Kawhi over Draymond all day, every day, there wouldn't really be any question about that. And that's nothing against Draymond Green, it's just that Kawhi Leonard is an amazing player. Now, related to that, we have another question on Patrick Williams. This one is from Eric Oval. What do you think Patrick Williams' ceiling is and floor? Well, I mean, I'm inclined to say that he really has no ceiling, just because you've had so many other NBA players talk about how great he is and that he has no ceiling. Coaching staff members have said that as well. Guys like Spencer Dinwiddie, Thaddeus Young, Garrett Temple, even LeBron James spoke very highly of Patrick. So I don't like giving the standard Kawhi Leonard comparison to Patrick Williams, because I don't think that's fair really to put that kind of pressure on him. And it's also just not really fair to Kawhi Leonard, who is a superstar. Although I think it's obvious that people can see similarities to their games. But I think his ceiling is that, yeah, he can be a superstar in this league. Again, that's his ceiling. Doesn't mean I fully expect that he will be a superstar, but if, he has the fundamentals to get there, the skill set, the physique, the athleticism, all of it, I'm not going to say that he's going to be an all-time great, but maybe one day being a top 10 or even top 5 player in the league is likely his ceiling. Now, his floor, I guess you could say, what you see right now as Patrick Williams is his floor, but that would be kind of a lazy answer. I think his floor is maybe like a Luol Deng type player, which isn't a bad thing at all. People forget that Luol Deng was an all-defensive team player, a 2-time All-Star, and for a good portion of his career was the Bulls' second or third option on the court. Now, obviously not something Bulls fans or the Bulls franchise is hoping for because they have higher expectations for Patrick than Luol Deng, but that's still a pretty good achievement if you can get to that level, even if it is your floor. Anyway, I just wanted to do a couple of these since there really wasn't a ton to report from Media Day today. So if you want to be featured in the mailbag video, which will be coming out in the future, be sure to leave any questions you have in the comments or in the Discord as well, which, by the way, if you want, you can join the Bulls Central Discord. It is linked in the description, as well as my social accounts if you want to follow me along there. Again, as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.